So I wrote a book. 3 years ago, actually, it launched. This very week, 3 years ago, my book launched. And I have been thinking so much about the book launch and these last 3 years and what a wild ride it has been for me. And there are two things that came to mind for me that I wanted to share with you today. And so the first thing has to do with the importance of writing a book if you want to do it. And then the second thing I want to talk to you about is the message of authenticity. And so when I was growing up as a little kid, never not once did I say to myself, one day I should write a book. But as I developed in my career, through my leadership work, my equity, diversity, inclusion work, my empowerment work, as a woman of color, I had this realization one day that there were things that I wanted to say that I felt it was important for me to say because, frankly, so few women of color are published as authors and have books out there, and certainly do not put their faces on books, or rarely do we see a book that has a woman of color on it. And so I thought to myself, I should do this. I should do this because it's important for me to use my voice. And at the same time, I felt really afraid because I was like, who am I to write a book? Like, why do you think you have the right to write a book? Who's even gonna listen to you? Who's gonna read your book? Are you good enough to do this? And more. And I can tell you now, having done it, first of all, it was a truckload of work, really hard to do, but it was worth every single step, moment of the way. It has been worth it because it has not only unlocked for me really important aspects of my career. Having a book, it really does help you career-wise, but more importantly, it helped to improve my life as a person. It helped me to better understand myself, understand the concepts and principles I was teaching about, and really, I think in writing my book about authenticity, I have become a better person. And so if you have ever thought about writing a book, do it. And if you have not thought about writing a book, do it. Think about it. You may decide that you don't want to, and that's fine too, but if you haven't thought about it, think about it, because maybe for you too, this feeling of maybe I should write a book will be unlocked for you. And let me tell you, we need more voices of color, women of color, people from across cultural identity groups that are underrepresented and marginalized to be heard. So that's my first message. My second message ties back to the authenticity principle. And by the way, I have all kinds of free resources online. If you haven't already gone to ridleybasine.com, my first name, last name.com, check it out because there's so many free tools and resources. And you can even download a copy of the first chapter for free. I've been thinking a lot about the message of authenticity. If this message of being who you are as much as possible was important pre-COVID, well, it sure as hell is important now, even more important. Why? Because we are in this global pandemic situation which has dramatically changed the way we work and live, and the extent to which we feel comfortable and safe talking about how hard this moment is ties back to whether our relationships are rooted in authenticity, whether our workplaces are rooted in authenticity, and more. But secondly, there's also a racial injustice crisis happening, and our level of comfort talking about and sharing what it's like to experience racism, or our desire to be an ally in the fight against racism and more, also ties back to the extent to which we feel safe and comfortable being authentic. And you know, as someone who talks a lot about disrupting white supremacy and focusing on being anti-racist, for me, the act of being who we are as much as possible, those of us who identify as being Black, Indigenous, and people of color, to me this is the act of disrupting white supremacy. Because when we commit to being more of who we are, especially what makes us different and unique culturally, ties back to our cultural identities, the authentic act of putting ourselves out there and challenging whiteness is a message of disruption. It's a message of self-love. It's a message of disrupting bias and other forms of oppression. And so it's critical. And so as I celebrate, oh, I'm gonna cry. As I celebrate the 3-year anniversary of my book, something I worked really hard to do and I'm really proud of, I wanted to pass these messages along to you as well in hopes that they inspire you. to find your voice and step into your power, and also to share your words and your wisdom with the world, because we need more of us to do that. So thank you so much for watching and listening, as always.